Hey everybody, I'm Jason Mefford and I'm back with Brad Miller and we are walking a spiritual path with you. And our discussion today may be something that at first you may think, why are you guys talking about this? But don't worry, that you're
That's pretty
gonna
much every week, I feel like,
every
though.
week. It's
It's like,
like
why are we talking about this?
just trust us, right? So this was one of the things that came to us. And it's letting others have their own experiences. So letting others have their own experiences. And I know this is something that I've been working on. I know Brad, you
Mhm,
mentioned it too. I had an example this morning, of something too with that. So maybe Brad, just kind of share from
mhm,
your side, what this is, how it kind of relates, how it's something that
mhm.
is important for us to do as we are, growing in our spirituality.
Sure. So I think as you go down the spiritual path, the longer you are on it, you start, I mean, obviously you see things that work for you. Maybe you have new ways of looking at particular aspects of life. You look at things that maybe you've done in the past and you said, "Woo, glad I'm doing that more anymore. I was totally off in left field someplace on it." But basically, I mean, essentially, you kind of look at things from a different perspective than you did before, and obviously, that keeps on evolving and things like that as you walk along. But and this is something that I noticed, have been catching myself doing recently, is it's really tempting to see other people who may or may not be on a spiritual path themselves. I mean, they may just be living life. Maybe a family member, a friend, um, some on social media. I've seen and kind of caught myself doing, but it can be tough sometimes when you see someone that you feel is maybe not going down the most optimal path for themselves, or maybe not making the decisions that you think is going to be in their best interest. They want to do something or they say something or whatever, and you're like, I don't maybe know if that's really in your best interest. Maybe they say something that you don't completely believe in. Maybe it was something you used to believe in, but as you've been walking on the path and things, you no longer believe that. You believe something different. But it can be tough sometimes to have these feelings, especially if you kind of have the sense of being here to serve others. It can be really tough to keep yourself from trying to reach out and help them, to be able to say, hey, now I think you're thinking of this the wrong way, or to maybe, kind of lean them back to the right direction, like, hey, you're falling off the path here. Let's move over this way. It can be really tough to do that, to not do that, because again, you want to help them, right? You want to see them maybe have some of the same positive experiences that you have had. Um, but we can't do that unless someone is actually reaching out to us and asking for our help. It's not our place to impose ourselves on them. It's not our place to tell them what they're doing wrong or to try to correct them, to fix them in some way. Like, they've got free will. I know we've talked about that before in previous episodes. Everyone has their free will. Everyone gets to choose what they want to do. It may or may not be in their best interest, but that's totally up to them. And by us actually stepping in and trying to change things to fix them, we might actually be harming them by taking away lessons that they have to learn, something that they're supposed to go through experience, that by our actions that never happens. So
Mhm.
that's something that I've kind of been catching myself lately, wanting to help, but I'm like, nope, can't do it, Brad. You got to sit back, and if they ask, okay, but until then, like, you just kind of have to let them go and let them do their thing and just appreciate them being on their own journey.
Yeah, and I think this is one of these things where uh, we have to get back to and actually be honest about what our intentions are, right? Because I think sometimes we may believe our intentions are to help other people, but are they really? Right? So like you said, if you've maybe learned something, you've gone through experiences yourself, and maybe now you don't believe something that you believed before, and so now you want to, show them the error of their ways, if you
Hmm.
will, right? uh a lot of times, even though we may kind of lie to ourselves that we're trying to help, really, if we're honest with our intention, it's we want to be right. We want to, convince somebody to believe what we believe. And that's where, again, this intersects with spirituality, right? Is because, what's our intention? Where are we coming from? Right? And it doesn't mean that we don't, necessarily correct people, but only usually if they're asking for it, or if we're in a relationship where that's wanted, or maybe because it has something to do with us directly. But even when sometimes it has something to do with us directly, we don't even have to do anything, right? Because I think one thing that's important to remember is, like you said, we're all on the path in different places. We've all experienced different things. And so, for example, if you believe something now that you didn't believe before, well, you went through experiences that helped you get to that point. And so everybody has to go through their own experiences to make, their own progress on their own journey. And so
Hmm.
trying to interfere with that can, like you said, end up crossing that line of do no harm,
Hmm.
right? Because, we're all choosing to do things, not do things, whatever, and it doesn't really matter, what people choose. It's their path. And so no, this is something that, again, has come up for me, because I know sometimes it's frustrating, especially if you're communicating with somebody and they just don't understand what you're saying. And so you feel like you've got to, I've got to convince them, I've got to debate with them, I've got to show them why they're wrong, I've got to,
Hmm.
they said something bad about me or something that isn't completely true, and I feel like I have to set them straight, right?
Right.
But we don't have to. And a lot of the times, two different people having the same experience will perceive it differently,
Hmm.
will get different lessons out of it. And it's okay for each of those people, right? And they each need to have their own experience, right? So as
Hmm.
an example, right, a family member that I haven't talked to in years just randomly reached out to me asking for money. Now, I haven't talked with this person for years. And in fact, in the last 15 years, the only time this person has reached out to me twice is to ask for money. So, whether they're a family member or not, if somebody unsolicited reaches out and asks for money, I ignore it. Okay. Now, and especially because I could tell from the message that this person sent that they were trying to use guilt and shame to coerce me into giving them money. So I could see the energy behind it. And there are all kinds of things I could have said, right?
Hmm.
Especially because a lot of the stuff that they were saying and in guilting and shaming me were not true. And so there's a part of me that wanted to just lash back and let them have it. And I'll be honest, right? I'm still human. I sat with that
Hmm.
off and on for a couple of hours. What should I do? What should I do? And those thoughts going through my head. It's
Hmm.
kind of like that on Seinfeld. George Costanza was always great for, after something had happened, he'd be like, "Oh, I should have said that," right? And so I sat there, again, kind of in the internal dialogue with myself, off and on for a couple of hours. trying to think, okay, well, is there something for me to learn here? Should I do it? Should I respond back? Are there certain things,
Mhm.
what should I do? And at the end of the day, I decided I shouldn't do anything. So I didn't respond. Now, when I didn't respond to the text, this person tried to call me. I didn't pick up the call, right? A week goes by and someone else, close to that person reaches back out to me and said, well, they didn't really need your help anyway. They were just testing you to see if you would step up. Okay, so did I read the energy right to begin with? Yes, right? And it was just a test. They were trying to manipulate me. Um, and I chose to do nothing. I didn't respond back to this other person either, right? Now, why, right? Or, why didn't I try to justify, my actions to them? Because it doesn't really matter, right?
Mhm.
Over the course of that time, I sat with it. What is right for me to do, right? What is authentic for me to do? What is, the best thing for me to do, regardless of how it may be interpreted by other people, right? Because that's the
Mhm.
thing that we have to be aware of is obviously with this interaction, that other group of people had a completely different understanding of what happened or what they thought was going through my mind or why I didn't respond. And that led to all
Mhm.
kinds of judgments, I'm sure, about me, right?
Mhm.
But I have to be okay with that, right? Because I have to allow them to have their own experience. I have to allow them to believe whatever they want to believe about myself, right? Their that's their
Yep.
journey. That's their part. The only thing that's important for me is how I feel about it, right? And so I feel good about my decision. I don't believe what they were saying about me or the judgments that they have about me. I don't believe that at all, right? I know why I did or did not do whatever I did, and I'm at peace with that, right? And I don't have an ego need to try to make them feel like they're wrong, you know? A few years ago I probably would have. I would have just laid into them, right? But that wouldn't allow them to maybe have the experience that they're supposed to have. They had their experience, I had my experience, right? And that's just what it is. And I have to allow that to be.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, that's a good reminder that the experiences that we have, even though they can be physically similar, maybe we're on the two sides of this discussion, but that everything is tainted by our own perceptions, by our indoctrinations, by the lenses that we look at the world through. And so to them, maybe it was true that something that this happened XYZ way. Um, but that's just again, the result of the way that they looked at things, the emotions they were feeling at the time, the things that they'd been told by others that they believe, their subconscious feelings and beliefs, all this other stuff, plays into all this stuff. And so I think it's good to remember that if somebody is not agreeing with you, if someone's coming at you something of a different perspective, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're wrong. Doesn't mean
Right.
that you're right. It just means that you perceived it in a certain way, and the other person may have perceived it in their own certain way, which can be completely different than the way you did. But there is no right, there is no wrong. There just is, um, you know, kind of what you have taken from it yourself. And so, yeah, dealing with other people, in situations like that, I think that's important. Um,
Well, and it's, we all live in our own reality bubbles,
mhm.
if you will. I'm gonna use that kind of as a metaphor, right? And so whatever exists within our reality bubble, we believe is true,
Hmm.
right? What I perceive, what I see, the colors I see, my beliefs, everything else, those are real to me. Those are real in my bubble, right? And so each of us has our own bubble. And what people want to do, right, is like this person has this certain reality bubble that they're living in certain
Hmm.
negative feelings towards me, let's say, right, that are included in there. And
Hmm.
they feel a certain way about themselves, and what people often want to do is they want to pull you into their reality bubble.
Hmm.
And sometimes we allow people to do that, sometimes we don't, right? But if I would have allowed that person to pull me into their reality bubble, if I would have, you know, felt the need to start, arguing with them about it or trying to justify what I do or don't do, now I'm included in their reality bubble, right?
Hmm.
And so all those feelings they have, the anger, the shame, the guilt, the whatever else, that starts to affect me as well, right? And
Hmm.
so that's not a bubble I wanted to get into. So I stayed in my bubble,
Hmm.
right? Which is, again, sending loving thoughts, to the person if they truly, are in need, um, but not feeling like I have to do anything in the 3D. And in fact, uh, what I did in the not 3D is actually way more helpful than sending them some money. But they don't understand that, right? Because they're living in a different reality than I am, right? And so for me, it's staying in my reality bubble of love, of gratitude, of, like I said, sending them love through the ethers and doing other things, right, to help in a way that I can help without getting sucked into their own experience, their own reality bubble. Because
Hmm.
I don't want to go there.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, you don't want to make they don't want their like there. You don't want their reality to become yours. And that's what happens if you allow them to pull you into their bubbles. Is their thoughts, their feelings, what happened now start to become yours. And obviously theirs were lower vibration than yours.
Well, and I think this happens all the time, right? I mean, everybody
Hmm. Oh
listening,
yeah.
you've had an experience like this, right? Where you come up to somebody, an acquaintance, a friend, a coworker, whoever, and they're just bitching and moaning about something, or they're gossiping about something, right?
Hmm.
And so you can choose to stay there, to participate in it, to offer your suggestions and your gossip and your opinions and your judgments, and boom, you're in that reality bubble with them, right?
Hmm.
And if you had been happy, if you'd been feeling joy, if you'd been feeling peace, guess what? Now you don't, because you're in that bubble of gossip and
Hmm.
and blah, right?
Yep.
Because you got sucked in. And so you're not just allowing other people to have their experience, you're allowing yourself to have their experience,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? Which we often end up doing, right? That as opposed to somebody, starts going off like that, and either you say nothing, or maybe if it's against a particular person, right? Like if they're gossiping about a person, maybe you feel the need to defend that person, maybe you don't, right? I don't know. It's going to depend.
Hmm.
Sometimes I feel the need to defend people who are not in the room, and other times I don't. But you want to try to remove yourself away from it. Hey, if they want to be in the gossip, if they want to be angry, if they want to be whatever, let them be in their reality bubble. Let them have
Hmm.
their experience, right? Because there's a reason why they're going through it. They're
Hmm.
choosing that. And because they're choosing it, there's some lesson they need to learn. But I've spent enough time in those bubbles, and I hope I have learned. I'm sure I haven't learned everything, but
Yeah.
I've learned that I don't like to be in those bubbles. So I
Hmm.
let people have their experience and I go have a different one.
Yeah.
That's why, I mean, some people it's like, I'm kind of a different person, in that, some people might think I'm not friendly or that I'm indifferent to people, but that's not necessarily the case. It's just I don't want to get pulled into it. I live in my own world. I live in
Hmm.
my own bubble. I mind my own business and I like it when other people mind their own business. It's like even this morning I'm out on the neighborhood thing, right? I I never have people come to my front door unless they're, Amazon, UPS, or FedEx, and they drop off the package and then they go, right?
Hmm.
But a couple days ago, I had a neighbor come over, and when I get a knock, knock, knock on the door, it's like, okay, that's interesting, right? And it's not like the
Hmm.
UPS knock, knock, I dropped it. It's like, solid pounding. And I'm sitting here watching a
Hmm.
football game, and it's like literally the last few minutes of the game, and it's like on the edge, and it's like, oh,
Hmm.
do I even answer the door, right? But I got up and I answered the door. Neighbor, oh my gosh, my cats got out, blah, 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 blah. Oh my gosh, last time they were hiding under your house, and it's like, no, my house is sealed up. They're not under there now, sort of a thing.
Hmm.
And I just sat and listened to it because again, I'm not gonna get pulled into her cats escaping have nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with me. And it's
Hmm.
not that I'm callous and I don't care, right? Because where I live, when animals like that get out, they become food for the
For other animals,
coyotes,
yeah. Hmm.
you know? And, but, it's like, what do you want me to do? So I just pretty much just said, oh, okay, okay, all right, okay, right.
Hmm.
What you want me to do? Drop everything, go out, start scouring the neighborhood with her?
If you could do neighborhood search, that would be wonderful, Jason. That
Yeah,
would have been.
neighborhood, get the pitchforks and everything else, and off we go. But it had nothing to do with me,
Hmm.
right? And so I just let it be. Sitting on my porch this morning. Again, this is a neighbor who I'm sitting there minding my own business, literally in my own space. A lot of times I have my headphones on. I can't even hear what people are saying, right?
Hmm.
And she yells from her driveway, I found my cats. So I put a thumbs up. And she kind of looks at me, expecting that I'm going to engage in a conversation with her. I don't want to engage in a conversation with her, right? Because I know the kind of person she is. She's a busybody, gossip, you know, queen of the neighborhood kind of a person. I don't want to be in her reality bubble at all. I don't talk to her. I don't wave to her. It's not that I'm unfriendly, but I don't want to engage and get in her reality bubble,
Hmm.
right? And she's happy to have her own. She wants to gossip and do all the other things. That's just fine because I'm sure, maybe she's saying stuff about me, the weird guy that lives next door, whatever, right?
Probably.
I don't care. I live in my own world and I let other people live in their own worlds. And sometimes, things,
Sure.
cross. But, more times than not, it has nothing to do with us.
Hmm.
But if we choose to get sucked in, that's again where it has a negative effect to us spiritually, because usually it pulls us, right, from those
Hmm.
other things into what they're doing. Right now, I happen to be quasi meditating on my porch, right? My eyes weren't closed, but she was far enough away she probably couldn't even see if my eyes were closed or not. But am I going to stop doing that to engage in a useless conversation? No, I'm just going to give her the thumbs up. And again, she probably thinks I'm an asshole. Okay, whatever. Right. Um,
You're not
she,
invited to the community picnic. This,
oh, if we have them, that's okay. I probably wouldn't go anyway.
Mhm.
Right. Um, but it's, and sometimes it's hard because I know, like you said, there's certain maybe social norms or things like this morning, her jaw kind of dropped like she was expecting me to talk to her. Well, I don't have any obligation to talk to you, but sometimes that's an indoctrination that we're given about being neighborly and, all this kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
That I don't believe. I used to maybe, but I don't now, right? And so it's not a place where I choose to go.
Sure. Yeah. No, so I've got a family member who is very jealous of those with money. Um, to the point where this person will often comment about people the size of their houses. Kind of the idea of, oh, they're showing their wealth off. If they've got a lot, they've got, three, four car garages and they've got fancy vehicles, and, she kind of judges people based on the size of their house and things like that. And I realized that this being around this person had actually colored my perceptions of things. That being in her bubble and being around the jealousy was actually causing me to not consciously maybe have those similar thoughts, but subconsciously putting ideas in my mind about having money is bad, being wealthy is evil, is a wrong. You shouldn't let people think that you've got money. Having a big house, cars, these things like that, that's it's wrong. It's, you know, and so that is actually something that I have been working on now for quite some time and continue to do so. Because it's one of those things where I didn't even realize it was happening until I realized that it was happening. Until one day, this person was saying something, and I had this realization of what was going on. I was like, wow, this person is very jealous about others with money. And there's a lot of negativity behind that for no reason. I mean, it's not like this person, they were hurting this person by having money, by having a large house. They were not doing anything wrong to her, but for whatever reason, and this is her own lessons, her own experiences of life, and that's fine. She sees having money, having wealth, having outwardly signs of wealth and abundance as bad. And so, kind of your point about, when you allow the bubbles into your bubbles, again, this is something that I've had to really work hard at to try to clean out and to flush out, because I realize that this has actually been keeping me from being able to have abundance in my life, because I still have this subconscious thing inside that says, oh, having money is bad. Being wealthy, there's something right about that. Money is the root of all evil, sort of a concept or whatnot. And so now I catch when it now I pick up every time that this person does that, and she talks like that and says things about someone's house or about their wealth, or kind of gets the gossipy thing. And I remind myself, first of all, that's her, not me. But I still sometimes kind of struggle with myself of, do I say something or not? Do I respond in kind of, hey, there's nothing wrong with them wanting a big house. That doesn't mean anything wrong with them. Maybe they have a lot of kids, they need a space. You know what? Maybe that makes them feel good that they can show abundance, and we should take that as an example of possibility for us. Because if they can have it, so can we. So I fight with that versus do I just say nothing, maybe just kind of nod, kind of like you did this morning, give her a thumbs up and, allow things to move on. Um, and like I said, I didn't, this is not something that I was conscious about for many, many years, many, many years. And so this, I think, goes to show just how powerful it can be when you get sucked into those bubbles of other people and then trying to figure out what to do once you kind of figure this out. Do I try to change her experience about it? Do I try to correct her in some way and point out the jealousy and things like that to her? Or do I just smile and just kind of go my way and try to block that off and, maybe reinforce the bubble in that spot, um,
Mhm.
to kind of keep that out? And I don't know. There's no right answer. And like you said, sometimes I kind of feel one way versus the other about it,
Mhm.
depending on the situation. But um,
Well, there's something I guess a little detail that I failed to mention that maybe kind of goes along with this too is a lot of times when these things happen, like, the family member reaching out to me, I get quiet, check in with myself,
Mhm.
right, and my guides and whatever else, but tap into my intuition, right? And I just say to myself, is this something I need to respond to?
Mhm.
And I feel whether or not in that instance it felt like, no, you don't need to say anything. Yep, I think that's right. Is you know, and sometimes again you can have that little dialogue with yourself, like, oh, well, it feels like I shouldn't say anything. Is that, should I just let this go? Right? And you feel
Mhm.
it. It's like, okay, let it go. I had another example where, a group that I'm in has like group messaging kind of stuff, right? And there's
Mhm.
there's some things going on in the group. And same thing, it's like, do I just allow people to have their own experience? I just stay silent, or I just, share from my standpoint, or do I not? Right. And so
Mhm.
same kind of thing, check in, and it's like, no, you need to say something. And I'm like, oh, I don't really want to say something.
Right.
No, you really need to say something, right? And so it was one of these where literally, like, for a whole day, I just kept getting this. You need to
And fighting
respond.
it.
You
Yeah.
need to respond. And so I'm sitting here trying to go through in my mind, okay, well, what would I say? What are the points that I want to make? Because
Yeah.
logically, right, part of me is trying to maybe make the argument, to convince somebody else of something. And
Yeah.
finally, it's like after the day, it's like I just gotta hit record and start talking, and I don't even know what I'm gonna say, but I got to get out whatever's got to get out. And I'm
Much like
gonna,
this podcast, in fact.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna talk until it feels like I don't need to talk anymore. And so I
Yep.
said whatever I said. I don't even remember exactly what I said. And I'm sure some people in the group misunderstood it because of some of the other responses that came back, but that's okay, right? I had to say what I needed to say and allow everybody else in the group to have their own experience with it
Mhm.
and not be concerned with how they may view me, what they may think about me because of me saying these things, right?
Mhm.
I just had to let it go. I have my experience, they have their experience, and whatever it is going to work out exactly the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. Which sometimes is tricky. Like if you've got the time to do that, like you talked about, you had a day to kind of sit there and think on it, or whatever. Sometimes it's kind of like in the spur of the moment.
Mhm.
Like, you're right there with this person and they're saying something and it's like, do I say something? Do I just sit on it? And you kind of have to make that quick decision about whether or not it's aligned to do one thing versus the other. Um, and it could be tough.
Well, that's why the
Like,
more we're in tune, the more we
yep,
stay connected to source, the
Exactly.
quicker those things can come, right? It's
Yep.
not like you can stop somebody in the middle of the conversation and say, "Excuse me just a minute. I need to go over there and meditate for 30 minutes to decide if how I'm going to respond to you." Right? They're
I
going
mean,
to be
that might
like,
be an interesting
"Huh?"
way to get them to cut it out. I mean, if you just said that, I wonder the reaction would be.
Well, and sometimes I do where I'll say, I need a minute to process what you just said,
Mhm,
right? I need a few minutes. Let me go process it and I'll come back to you. That's okay.
mhm.
That's okay to say.
Yeah.
But the more that we are in touch with our intuition, it literally takes
Mhm,
a second in our mind, a pause, right? And again, a few second pause is not a big deal in a conversation, for
mhm,
us to be able to know or feel what we should do in those particular instances. But see, what happens is we get pulled in,
mhm,
you get pulled into their bubble. Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. Right? And you get
mhm.
disconnected from the intuition and from source
Exactly.
at that point because you've lowered your vibrational frequency, right? Or you're trying
Mhm.
to, or you want to go at them, right? And all of a sudden,
Yeah.
again, you move to a lower frequency, cut yourself off from source. And so it's trying to, stay higher in that point of saying, I love this person. How should I respond? Right? And trying to
Mhm.
stay in that vibration of love for them.
Yep. No, exactly. Yeah. And it's just it's practice. It's the experience of doing it. And the first couple times it's probably gonna go sideways on you, and that's okay.
It's
It's part of
okay
the learning
because
experience, you
it's
know.
part of your experience that you need to have,
Yeah.
and but that's like I said, I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit more, but I think, the main thing is for people to just, start being aware of it, start playing with it, start practicing with it, and just kind of see where it goes. Stay in your bubble. Try to, stay away from other
Mhm.
people's bubbles that you don't want to be in.
Yeah. And just let them have the experience that they need to have. Again, if they need to have that experience of the cats being out and all that stuff, then by all means let them have it. That's
Right.
for them. That's not our place to get involved with that.
Exactly.
And that to me is a really important lesson that I'm working on.
Yep. So so with that, we're going to wrap up for this week. But yeah, hopefully this was helpful. Let other people have their experiences. You have your own experience. Don't try to be right, all the time, and check in with your intuition to see what you should do.
Hmm.
So with that, have a great week, everybody. Blessings to you, and we will see you on our next episode.
See ya.